Believe it or not, border crossings on our southern border have actually decreased over the last month. So the Border Patrol has estimated that there are less than 1,800 apprehensions per day over the last week. This decline is coming off the back of a new asylum restriction that President Biden put into place, where he was only going to allow a certain number of people to claim asylum who crossed the border illegally at past a certain point, and then stop the asylum claims and put them back to the Mexico side of the border. So that means that since these restrictions have come into play, immigration has gone down 55%.
Wow.
55%. To put this into perspective, this is now lower immigration. This is lower border crossings than the peak of the Trump administration.
Wow.
So there's definitely some good progress coming on the border side where we're talking about illegal immigration. So one senior Customs and Border official said that Vice President Kamala Harris actually personally helped craft the strategy and was has been successful in bringing down illegal border crossings dramatically. So this kind of comes at the attack that Republicans have been putting on Kamala Harris about how she was the border czar and she's done nothing. She's, the open border. She'll be an open border president because she's been an open border vice president. Well, we have this senior official in the Customs and Border Protection saying that the exact opposite. That Kamala Harris is actually pretty hands-on with a lot of this stuff.
Yeah,
and
I also want to give the context that Kamala Harris was never the border czar. She was never responsible for border crossing enforcement. She was assigned the root causes problem, which is basically trying to improve the economies of the Central and South American countries that most of these migrants come from.
Yes.
So I feel like I don't want to skip over that this border czar accusation that Republicans wield against her isn't really fair.
Right. It's not accurate. What she was in charge of was going to Ecuador, Guatemala, Nicaragua, and these other countries, and then trying to work with the administrators there and work on trying to find a way to stop the border crossings from happening in the first place, not the direct what's going on at the border.
Yes.
Right? That wasn't the point.
Yeah.
I also want to talk about what type of people are crossing the border. And no, I don't mean from what countries. I mean what types of groups. Single adults, family units, or unaccompanied minors. So during the Trump administration, we saw a higher percentage, around 10% of border crossings coming from unaccompanied minors. That has now decreased to around 5%. We've seen an increase of family units coming than were under the Trump administration, and the single adults are equal to what was under the Trump administration. After COVID, there was a huge spike. After and during COVID, there was a huge spike of only single adults crossing the border. And that was probably because no one wanted to travel in a pandemic, and only single adults were willing to make that travel. Now, since then, we've declined in the proportion of single adults. I know that single adults is what gets people worried with immigration the most.
Yeah.
I feel like the general American population doesn't have a big fear of families coming here and claiming asylum or unaccompanied minors coming here and claiming asylum. But the single adults, 22-year-old man, that can be off-putting to American citizens if it's all that. Unfortunately, is how it is.
Yeah.
And that proportion is going down, which is good to know. Now, all of this suggests with the media cycle that immigration is bad for the country and that it's a 100% good thing that immigration is down.
Yeah.
That's not really the case. We've talked about on the show so many times that immigration is actually one of the biggest strong parts of the American economy. It's been able to keep us out of a recession over the last year and has really made us the strongest economy in the world.
Yeah.
Because all these newly created jobs, the majority of them are going to foreign-born workers. And it's not because they're taking jobs from native-born workers. It's because native-born workers are leaving the workforce.
Yes.
And if we weren't getting this influx of foreign-born workers, our economy would generally be shrinking. And because of the growing effects of immigration, the Congressional Budget Office has found that it will decrease the nation's deficit by $900 billion over the next 10 years.
That's huge.
This comes from two reasons. One, it is going to increase revenue by about $1.2 trillion over the next decade. But the benefits that the children of these immigrants will get either through Social Security and disability payments or all the others, will be $278 billion. So $1.2 trillion minus $278 billion, there's that $900 billion number that will improve our deficit over with. And that's on top of growing the economy. That is on top of wages being better for native-born workers, because foreign-born workers are taking jobs at the bottom of the labor chain, which is going to boost up native-born workers into higher paid positions. But none of this good news around economic data related to immigrants is stopping Donald Trump by trying to do a speed run on how to destroy the American economy in 10 days. We talked about the tariff proposal that he's talking about. We talked about how he wants to get rid of the income tax. We've talked about and now let's talk about his deportation plan. Trump wants to deport 20 million immigrants out of the country. 20 million people out of the country. Now, I want you to just think, just for a second, what you think would happen if 20 million people in a second just left the country. The answer is mass job openings, huge layoffs, not enough people in the labor force, massive amounts of problems. So 45%, specifically in the agricultural sector, there are 45% of all agricultural workers in the United States, are estimated to be illegal or undocumented migrants. 950,000 of an estimated 2.2 million farm workers are unauthorized. Wisconsin in particular is one state that would be super heavily affected, where 70% of the state's dairy farms used unauthorized labor. So 70% of these dairy farms are going to be totally without the labor that they need in order to produce their products. Immigrant labor is also involved in 79% of the nation's entire milk supply. These are things that you don't really think about, right? These are the questions these are the topics that do not get covered when we talk about immigration. We don't talk about how actually fundamentally important they are to the basis of our economy.
And I want to say that I think someone listening to you might think, oh, so you just want to continue to keep these illegal immigrants as second-class citizens so we can use them for cheap labor. The answer is no. The answer is let's legalize these people. Let's give them the rights of citizens or residents of the U.S. so that they can remove this constant existential fear. They can continue to work these productive jobs, and they're not treated as a different class of person.
Exactly. There was a paper published by Chloe East, who is a professor in Colorado, and she studies specifically the economic impacts of deportation. And she found that for every 1 million immigrants that get deported, the country loses 88,000 jobs.
Wow.
Okay. So why does this happen? You would think, oh, wait a second. If immigrants get kicked out of the jobs, won't an American native born just go and take the job? No, because job markets are not static. It's just not one pie that we're all fighting for a slice of. The pie grows with every new person that comes into the country.
Exactly.
So hiring undocumented workers that do basic construction tasks like setting concrete or these other small craft positions make native-born workers available to do the higher payer jobs that get them higher wages. And so I wanted to talk about this decrease in immigration, one, because it shows that the Democrats are not trying to have an open border, one.
True.
They're trying to have a regulated border, but they're just not anti-immigration.
Yes.
Whereas Donald Trump wanting to deport 20 million people would have drastic negative economic consequences that would really have no benefit. And I think that question needs to be a hit on him more, is like, what does he want to accomplish by getting rid of the 20 million people? Like, what does he want? Because if you throw these economic numbers at him, make him say the dirty stuff. Make him say that these people.
But I think he never would. I think he would say, no, that's not true.
Sure.
It's gonna be great. We're gonna have all the jobs come back to the people who want them. The housing market is gonna open up. Prices are gonna go down.
He would just
dispute
dispute the facts.
Exactly.
He would just dispute the facts.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things where we have to do a better job of being on top of this type of stuff and understanding that immigrants, there's no negative externality. It's a positive.
Exactly.